The second largest city in Brazil after São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro is one of the most important metropolises of the American continent. It was the capital of the country until 1960 and has almost 7 million inhabitants called Cariocas. Enjoying a great touristic potential, the city is also a large center for banking and especially audiovisual media. It is the third worldwide producer after the United States and Japan. In the very modern center district, the St. Sebastian Cathedral deploys its avant-garde design that is reminiscent of the pre-Columbian pyramids, a symbol of the union between the old and new world. The center district is mainly a commercial and tourist area. It is home to a large concentration of corporate headquarters and the city government. It is a blend of historic structures and skyscrapers that are true jewels of modernist architecture. The largest campuses of the country's great universities are there. The area holds a large number of hotels, theaters, cinemas, popular markets, squares, and cafes. It is traditionally the center of the city's bohemian life, especially around Lapa. Lapa is one of the most lively places at the end of the week, with lots of music in the bars and in the squares. You can listen to samba, forró, and MPB, or Brazilian popular music. Over the course of recent years, Lapa has established itself as the go-to destination for foreign tourists, with its old colonial houses and their vivid colors. While the majority of Cariocas are of Portuguese, African, or Indian descent, Italian, Lebanese, German, Spanish, Jewish, and Japanese communities exist in the different areas of the city. Not far away, the Teatro Municipal, or Municipal Theater, is considered one of the most beautiful and important theaters of Brazil. The building was conceived in the eclectic style, inspired by the Opera Garnier in Paris, France. Its construction, begun in 1905, stands on a base of 1,180 wooden poles, anchored in the underground water. The most famous Brazilian artists associated with Europeans worked together to create this masterpiece. The Tiradentes Palace was the former Brazilian parliament before the capital was moved to Brasilia. Today, it is the home of the Legislative Assembly of Rio de Janeiro. Also built in the eclectic style in the beginning of the 20th century, its concrete facade is decorated by neoclassical columns and allegorical sculptures representing the independence of the Republic. In Brazil, 90% of the population declares actively practicing a religion. Catholicism was the main religion of the country since the 16th century with the arrival of the Portuguese. But today, the Catholics of Rio de Janeiro only make up 50% of the population, although many churches built by the Portuguese still exist today. The old Cathedral of Rio de Janeiro was built in the 18th century for the Carmelites. It became a royal, then imperial chapel in the 19th century. Reverting to a simple parish church, it remains one of the principal historical monuments of the Brazilian metropolis. In the most pure Rococo style, the woodwork was done by the sculptor Inácio Ferreira Pinto, one of the most famous sculptors of the colony in the 18th century. It's beneath its arches that the coronation of the first emperor of Brazil took place on December 1, 1822, as well as the signing of the country's first constitution in March 1824. Becoming too cramped to satisfy the needs of the service, it lost its cathedral status to the new modern cathedral. The Candelaria Church is an equally important historic church in the city of Rio de Janeiro. Begun in 1775, its construction and decoration lasted over a century. The church combines the Baroque architecture of its facade with the neoclassical architecture and neo-Renaissance elements of its interior. Somewhat legendary, the story of the founding of the church begins in the 16th century, when a boat called Candelaria suffered through a very strong storm at sea and nearly sank. Arriving in Rio, the Spanish survivors sponsored the construction of a chapel to honor the oath they had taken during the storm. This small chapel, dedicated to Our Lady of the Candelaria, has since been replaced by the current church. A large part of the city of Rio is part of a geological structure that has undergone strong tectonic upheavals, forming the hills, mountains, and valleys that characterize the coast. The Pão de Açúcar, or Sugarloaf Mountain, and the Corcovado are perfect examples. To get there, one must leave Santa Teresa in the center district by taking the tramway. Opened in 1875, it is one of the oldest in the world. Reaching the summit of Corcovado, the famous statue of Christ the Redeemer, arms stretched out to form a cross, dominates the city from the 710-meter height of the rock. Measuring 38 meters high, the statue was created by the French sculptor Paul Landowski and erected by the Brazilian engineer Heitor da Silva Costa. The armature is concrete and the coating is soapstone, a tender but very resistant rock that doesn't crack under the pressure of changing temperatures. A simple religious monument at its start, with the passing of time, it has become one of the internationally recognized emblems of the city, along with Sugarloaf Mountain, Copacabana Beach, and the Rio Carnival. "260 kilometers southwest of Delhi, Rajasthan, literally the country of kings, offers a series of sumptuous, beautiful palaces. It is the opportunity to visit Jaipur Palace in the state's capital. The name Jaipur is derived from Jai, victory, and Pur, city. It was founded in 1727 by the Maharaja Jai Singh, a famous astronomer and mathematician. The city follows a grid pattern, and its surrounding walls are 6 meters high and 4 meters wide. It is accessed through one of 8 gates. The complex was the seat of the Maharaja of Jaipur. The structure is accessed by Rajendra Pol, a magnificent gate decked by 2 marble-sculpted elephants. The audience hall Diwan-i-Khas, entirely covered in marble, stands in the middle of the courtyard. And here we delve into the marvelous world of the Havelis, the palaces of the Maharajas. In the room, 2 gigantic silver jars, the biggest in the world, are displayed, as well as sumptuous crystal chandeliers. We are now in front of the Moon Palace. Today, most of the palace is occupied by the descendants of the first leaders of Jaipur. Only the museum on the ground floor can be visited. Chandra Mahal is 7 stories high, and each floor has its own name. On the roof, a pavilion topped with the royal family's flag offers a panoramic view over the gardens and the entire city. The Mubarak Mahal, or Welcome Palace, is a mix of Mughal, Rajput, and European styles, built in 1890 by the Maharaja Madho Singh II as a residence for his guests. With a passion for mathematics, astronomy, and astrology, King Jai Singh II had 5 observatories constructed in northern India in the 1720s. The Observatory of Jaipur is the most impressive. The observatory contains a series of specialized astronomical instruments. This is the biggest sundial in the world, rising 27 meters high. It measures time up to 2 seconds. another particularity of Jaipur. At the intersection of Tripoli and Bazaar, a fragile edifice rises above the avenue, Hawa Mahal, the aptly named Wind Palace. Built in 1799 as a place of fresh air for the Maharaja's wives and concubines in summer. 953 windows and balconies decorate the 5-story facade, letting the air in and enabling the women to see outside while preventing them from being seen. The Rambagh Palace, of modest size, was built in 1835 to house a private servant to the Queen, the nurse of Prince Ram Singh II. The building, then surrounded by a thick forest, was converted into a hunting lodge in 1887. A palace built on this site by the architect Sir Samuel Jacob in the early 20th century later became the summer residence of the Maharaja. The palace was occupied by the royal family until 1957. But due to the major maintenance expenses of the palace and its 19-hectare gardens, the Maharaja decided to convert the palace into a luxury hotel. Leaving Jaipur, the road to Delhi follows a placid lake at the center of which an abandoned palace seems to float. Painted in the colors of a sunset, the Jal Mahal is magical. The palace has 5 floors. The first floor routinely flooded during the rainy season when the level of the lake rises. Further down the road rises another image of eternity. Overlooking a gorge, a powerful fortress on a rocky peak stands protected by a second higher bastion. Here is Amber. Amber was founded in the 12th century at the intersection of the roads to Delhi and Agra. It was a capital city for over 5 centuries, and when the king moved the capital to Jaipur, Amber was not abandoned. Not only did Amber maintain an essential role in the military defense of the new city, but it also remained over many decades an important governmental and religious site. Like most Indian fortresses, Amber has its own public audience hall. Built in the 17th century, the architecture of this hall is purely Hindu and differs from the Mughal style that is commonly seen in northern India. Ganesh Pole is the ceremonial gate that leads to the private quarters and palaces of the sovereigns. The gate is decorated with colorful mural paintings displaying a heavy Mughal influence. The screened windows on the upper floors enabled women to see outside in accordance with the purdah, which prevents women from being seen by men. In the Zinana Bagh, the women's garden, water is piped through the walls to refreshen the atmosphere. The fountain was perfumed with rose water. In the idyllic site that comprises the ladies' apartments, the Maharaja's 12 wives and his concubines remained cloistered. Each had her own private apartment, giving out onto the courtyard of the Ram Singh Palace, where they would gather together in a site rife with intrigue and betrayal. Amber Palace was thus designed to be a major site in the development of Jaipur, the creation of double city territory enclosed by surrounding walls spanning a 50-kilometer periphery. Fortunately, the Spanish did not destroy all traces of the ancient Mayan civilization. Located a little less than 50 miles to the south of Mérida, Uxmal is an antique Mayan city from the Classic period. Its rise, peak, and fall cover a short period during the 9th and 10th century. The Del Adivino Pyramid, or Diviner's Pyramid, is Uxmal's most imposing monument. It appears as a 35-meter rocky mass with a temple on its top. The stones are so precisely cut and locked into one another that no plaster or mortar were used for the construction. One has to go through the Bird Square to fully appreciate the complexity of the Diviner's Pyramid. As is often the case, the structure was built and expanded over several periods, and its western face is designed so that the entrance appears as a creature's mouth, giving the ensemble the aspect of an animal. The Bird Square takes its name from the sculptures on the relics of its patio, holding 13 columns and 4 rooms. On the friezes are representations of plants and woven palm roofs, typical of Mayan peasant huts. It appears as though this structure was an administrative center. Further on, the Quadrangulo de las Monjas, the Nuns' Quadrangle. These are 4 elongated buildings surrounding a trapezoid patio. Its name does not designate its function. It was given by the Spanish discoverers who found it resembled the convents they knew. In reality, it served as a school for healers, astronomers, or priests. As Puck tradition requires, the bottom half of the wall strikes a strong contrast with the richly ornamented upper half, where the stone mosaic lattice work creates symbolic grooves, previously made with stucco and painted in bright colors. The pelot ground is not as well preserved. On top of the 2 lateral walls must have been for the stands. The rubber ball could be touched with neither hands nor feet, and the aim of the game was to get it through these rings. The ring was reconstituted from fragments found here. The translation of the glyphs engraved on it suggests the 9th of January, 905. This rattlesnake was the banister of the stands that have collapsed. The Uxmal complex is made up of several pyramids, temples, and constructions. Unanimously recognized as the most complex masterpiece of Puk architecture, the governor's palace did not need much restoration, having been exceptionally well preserved. It was built around the year 900 on an immense triple terrace. Two high and thin Mayan arches connect the main building to the 2 lateral parts. Above the main entrance that opens in the axis of the planet Venus is a king wearing a feathered coiffure sitting down. Here is a torture stone. The platform upon which the 2-headed jaguar throne rests was revealed by archaeologists to hold very precious and valuable offerings such as jewels. The House of the Turtles is a harmoniously sober building, with a series of turtles on its frieze which could represent the constellation of Orion, where the god of corn came from. The Great Pyramid of Uxmal. It stands 35 meters high on a square basis, 80 meters long on each side. The temple standing on the upper platform, accessible by a large stairway, was named the Temple of the Aras. From its summit, it appears that Uxmal's monuments are emerging from a dense green ocean of forest. The Château de Chambord is a French Renaissance-style chateau. It was built under the reign of Francis I, starting in 1519. At that time, the royal court had settled here in the Loire region. Though many architects worked on the chateau's construction, Francis I himself was personally implicated in its construction, doubtlessly with the help of his friend Leonardo da Vinci. The construction of Chambord began in 1519. This new wonder of the world was meant to immortalize its constructor, Francis I, the Prince Architect. (1,800) workers participated in the chateau's construction. Louis XIV also had a flower bed created in front of the north facade, as well as a canal. When King Louis XIV came to Chambord with Madame de Maintenon, he was sometimes accompanied by Molière's famous theater troupe, who would perform ballet plays set to music by Lully. The Prince heirs inherited the domain and managed it as best they could throughout the French Revolution. The Château de Chambord has a very specific silhouette. It is one of the architectural masterpieces of the Renaissance. It has 426 rooms, 77 staircases, 282 chimneys, and 800 sculpted capitals and pediments. Among the drawings that da Vinci left are structures in the form of the Greek cross, characteristic of both the Château de Chambord and many Italian churches of the time, like St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, built at the same time. But this design was rarely used in secular buildings. It was modified by the addition of two wings that are accessed by the two Renaissance spiral staircases. In the main building, also called the dungeon, the atmosphere is different. The four halls that make up the Greek cross floor plan are majestic. The initial main corridors were equipped with chimneys, so guests could stay warm while waiting to be received by the king. In the center sits the majestic double spiral staircase, the treasure of Chambord. The double spiral staircase is undoubtedly the chateau's most impressive architectural element. Two people can ascend the staircase on either side without ever meeting. It is made up of a central open space around which two stairways are wound to reach the main floors of the building. The keep's cross-floor plan thus creates four identical apartments on each floor. There are 4 square apartments and 4 apartments in the round towers on every floor. Tours of the chateau are thus organized vertically around the keep's 3 floors. Only the 2 opposite wings are different from the rest. The royal wing of Francis I is made up of the former council room and the royal bedroom with its small annexes. After Francis I, Louis XIV also took part in the chateau's development. The royal apartments today evoke the flamboyant 18th century when the chateau was inhabited by a close relation of King Louis XV, the Marshal of Saxe. Here we discover the major works that were undertaken at that time to bring heat and comfort to the building. Courtesans passed through the enfilade of rooms to reach the parade room from which they could attend the rising of the king. At the time of the Marshal of Saxe, the chateau's former living areas were divided by wooden walls into many small rooms that constituted work cabinets, antechambers, and bedrooms. Their decor is reminiscent of the 17th century. In this very geometrical construction plan, all the apartments, furnished with beautiful pieces and adorned with paintings of the time, are laid out in perfect symmetry. In the park, the canal was once again dug and cleared, and in 1981 the domain was listed as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. The Great Terrace on the third floor, also inspired by Leonardo da Vinci, wraps around the dungeon's tower, itself topped by the Lantern Tower, which is easily recognized from the outside. Stepping out onto the terraces is a source of amazement. Besides the 360-degree view of the park and the surrounding area, the terraces give the impression of being at the heart of a celestial village. The pavilion's rooftops are decked with staircase turrets, chimney stacks, and elaborately decorated dormer windows. The Château de Chambord has a very particular silhouette. The exuberance of the highest parts breaks with the sobriety of the facades and gives a lyrical feel to the imposing keep. Francis I had a great esplanade built on the south side, so as to create a link with the park. The chateau's very particular silhouette, designed by Francis I himself, nonetheless remains an architectural enigma in France. It is very probable that Chambord was partially born of the prolific imaginings of Leonardo da Vinci, who had defected from the Italian court to join his friend, the King of France. During the 3 last years of his life, he worked here as an architect to the court of Francis I, and he died close to here, just before construction began. Heading south, Lake Atitlan is an endorheic lake that came into being after a volcanic eruption. It is contained in a large caldera or crater formed by an eruption 84,000 years ago. It is bordered to the south by 3 big volcanoes that reach into the clouds, the San Pedro, Toliman, and Atitlan volcanoes. The latter is the tallest, reaching 3,537 meters. The lake is the deepest in all of Central America, reaching 340 meters. In this magnificent region, the lake presents a splendid panorama, a haven of peace far from our daily lives. Traditional villages can still be found along the lake's banks. Santiago Atitlan is the biggest town along the lake, but Panarachel has the greatest tourist infrastructure. Panarachel is thus a lakeside city, set at a high altitude at nearly 1,600 meters. It has a population of 11,000. The town attracted many hippies in the 1960s, but the number of foreign visitors plummeted during the Civil War, which finally ended in 1996. Since the war's end, tourists have started to return. The Atitlan Nature Reserve is located on the periphery of Panarachel. Visitors can observe the monkeys and butterflies or go canyoning or hiking on the nature trails. Here, one is fully immersed in the daily life of the Maya Indians. 2 different ethnic groups reside in the region. In the 16th century, during the Spanish conquest of Guatemala, the lakeside was the stage of a battle in which the Spanish pitted the 2 groups against each other to seize power. Twelve American Indian villages are nestled on these fertile slopes, and 3 languages are spoken here, at least. All have their own specific colors, following ancestral motifs that symbolize clan origin, family origin, and loyalties. There are nearly 250 throughout the entire country. Comedores and a restaurant with a beautiful view of the lake are found near the docks. Panarachel is the starting point for boats making rounds to the lakeside villages. Here, commuting is done by boat. There are no buses, and each resident owns a boat. An unexpected marina. You must wake up early if you want to catch the most beautiful of all tropical sights. On the banks of Lake Atitlan, the early morning hours are free of clouds and the sunlight is exceptionally clear. Every day, the taxi boats run their routes back and forth, and from the pontoon, you can head out to visit the volcanoes. Here we are at the heart of the Guatemalan Sierra Madre, where the clash of the continental plates have created a beautiful volcanic range. 33 volcanoes all in all, 3 of which were still active not so long ago. The 3 volcanoes which line the caldera of Lake Atitlan are stratovolcanoes, made up of successive layers. With over a dozen recorded eruptions between 1469 and 1853, the last eruption to date, the volcanoes erupted relatively often. Due to the region's popularity, other cities along the lake, such as San Juan, are starting to develop due to tourism. Some shops sell textiles woven by local women's cooperatives. Some use natural dyes, like carrot or ashiot, a local red berry used in cooking and harvested locally. In town, there are also many local art galleries. But the town's main specialty is weaving, because the locals still make and wear their traditional clothing on a daily basis. The tropical climate is more temperate at a higher altitude. The soil is quite fertile due to its volcanic component, and agriculture is the main economic resource of Guatemala, since the country's economy was devastated by war. The agricultural sector employs half of the working-age population. Coffee, sugar, and bananas make up the country's main exports. Mayan culture is still very present in Guatemala, and as such, many women still wear traditional Mayan clothing, the cote, the Mayan skirt, and the huipil, or blouse. In Mayan tradition, weaving has always played an important role. Today, for their heirs, clothing reflects the identity of he or she who wove it, the place he is from, the family he's from, even the place he occupies within the universe. Santiago is another village in the land of eternal spring, with pretty wooden houses. Strolling down the street, weavers are seen working on vividly colorful cloths. But the country has been, and continues to be, devastated by natural catastrophes. In February 1976, a violent earthquake fractured the lake's bed, causing a 2-meter drop in the water's level in a single month. In 2007, another earthquake created the opposite effect. Since, the water's level has risen around 8 meters, flooding the banks and destroying houses. Furthermore, the region was seriously impacted by Hurricanes Mitch in 1998 and Stan in October 2005. The lake is also fragile. It has no natural outlet. It depends solely on rainwater, and thus it is vulnerable and requires permanent surveillance. Pollution and other man-made effects threaten this fragile ecosystem. In order to protect it, the lake region was made a national park in 1955. And if heaven exists, it must look something like this. A last look back to take in the silhouettes of the volcanoes, which, eerily enough, are reminiscent of the Mayan pyramids. Continuing on down the Nile, in the eastern part of Luxor, formerly Thebes, stands the funeral temple of one of the greatest Egyptian pharaohs, Ramses II. The Ramesseum was a vast religious and economic complex. It contains a number of large relics such as monumental gates, pylons, paintings, giant statues, bas-reliefs, as well as mud brick storerooms and a sanctuary. The entrance pylon is about 22 meters tall and 70 meters consolidated. On the side which is still visible, we see, among other things, a description of the Battle of Kadesh, a campaign led by Ramses II against the Hittites in the 5th year of his reign. The Ramesseum is an immense architectural complex spread over around 5 acres. It was built in 1277 BC. In the last 20 years, precise surveys of the buildings have been carried out, but only half the site has been excavated. With all these stones, the site has not been pillaged, but the colossi have been knocked down, and the statues of Osiris damaged, probably at the hands of the early Christians. It was Champollion, decipherer of the hieroglyphs, who gave it the name Ramesseum in the 19th century. Ramses II himself had referred to it as the Temple of Millions of Years. Ramses II ruled for 66 years, an incredibly long reign for that time. Like so many other great men whose fame has lasted through the centuries, Ramses II was apparently a great warrior and conqueror. This reputation earned him the epithet of great in most of the historic records, which refer to this period of ancient Egypt. Ramses II is also considered, rightly or wrongly, to have been pharaoh at the time of Moses and the Exodus. That said, there is no archaeological proof to confirm this, and his name does not ever appear in the Torah. As well as the many monuments that he had erected throughout the country, he also commissioned a number of sculptures of himself, and had his name engraved in many temples, including those of other pharaohs, as though he had been responsible for their construction himself. The combined effect of all these elements, archaeological data and the strength of collective memory, has been to make Ramses II into one of the most famous pharaohs known through. Near the entrance to the sanctuary, a pink granite statue of Pharaoh lies in pieces on the ground. It must have been about 18 meters tall. This colossal statue, one of the largest in the country, weighing roughly 1,000 tons, is visible from outside the temple. The Colossus represents the two facets of the king, human and divine. The Colossus had a religious purpose, a symbol of the king. A Greek man called Diodore de Sicile was the first to discover this site in the 1st century BC. He described the site, and particularly the second colossal statue of Tuyi, the mother of Ramses II. But that was before the arrival of Christianity in the area. Since then, explorers never managed to find the scattered remains of the statue. Today, after a number of excavation campaigns and surveys, a team has started work on the reconstruction of this colossus before starting on that of Ramses II himself. The Ramesseum has a number of hypostyle halls, and the columns and architraves within them have maintained much of their original coloring. Here we find references to the cult of Ammon. The cult grew up around the area of Thebes during the era thanks to the clergy, who built up his status, endowing him with the power of a universal god by bestowing on him the functions of other gods. Gradually, Ammon replaced Ra as the dynastic god, and he took the form of Ammon-Ra, appropriating the characteristics of the sun god. The use of color in these temples was exceptional. Advancing toward the shrine, we see the life of Ramses II, who died at 90 years old, on the walls, his family, his coronation, his political power, and his wars. Notably, the hieroglyphs represent the war with the Hittites, the civilization that extended from modern-day Turkey to Syria, and the Battle of Kadesh. This battle was the first to be documented by antique sources. It was the object of an impressive commemoration by Ramses II, who saw it as a personal victory, even if it wasn't really a success for his kingdom. The battle took place around 1274 BC in the south of modern-day Syria. The Pharaoh's shock troops were made up of companies of light two-wheeled chariots, pulled by 2 horses and ridden by 2 soldiers, 1 driver and 1 archer, who could also use other arms in case of close combat. On the other wall, Ramses II is being crowned by Amun. He receives the attributes of divine power. A full-scale town grew up around the temple with housing, schools, administration, and commerce. Hangars made of bricks stand as a testament to that sumptuous era. These are the oldest vaulted arches in the world still standing. We see it project after project. The history of the Ramesseum becomes clearer. But its restoration can never replace either the statues and stones that have disappeared, nor the sacred images and the history that they embodied. Iconoclasts of all kinds, be they Christian or Muslim, have destroyed or tried to destroy the mystical aspirations of the civilizations without which humanity would never have achieved what it has today. The Plaza de Mayo, the May Square in the area known as El Centro, is the heart of Buenos Aires. This is where, in the 16th century, the Spanish first took up residence in Buenos Aires. Its name refers to the anniversary of the first independent government in 1810. Any political rallies or sports events in Buenos Aires take place in the Plaza de Mayo. For Argentines, it's a place of celebration. Built according to the European model, the town center combines historical monuments and modern buildings, testament to new architectural styles. Buenos Aires is one of the most highly populated cities in the world, with a mixed and varied population. Cosmopolitan. Buenos Aires is the capital of Argentina, but it is first and foremost the capital of tango. More than a dance, tango is a true phenomenon that was begun in the late 19th century during the wave of European immigration that brought in mainly Italians and Europeans. This European atmosphere is very much in evidence in the Café Tortoni, one of the oldest and best-known cafes in Buenos Aires. It was once the meeting place for many artists, intellectuals, and politicians. Inherently traditional, its magnificent decor takes us straight back to the old cafes of distant Europe. Above it is the Academia Nacional del Tango, one of the most famous Argentine tango schools. Tango has this reputation of being a passionate and fascinating dance that is first and foremost based on rhythm. There are 3 different styles of tango within the genre: the tango, the waltz, and its ancestor, the milonga. The milonga has a quicker pace, the music is in 2/4 time, the waltz is in 3/4 time, and the tango is in 4/4. There are 3 different rhythms to the tango. That is the traditional way of dancing. But today in Buenos Aires, the tango is danced much more than the waltz and the milonga. Not far from here, tucked in amongst the hordes, are a number of shops specializing in selling tango shoes. Tango is an integral part of national culture, and any self-respecting Argentinian woman on her way out for a night of tango dancing will take great care in her choice of shoes. With an amazing choice of shapes, colors, and materials, dancers can be tempted into spending small fortunes. And even the most demanding of dancers is sure to find a pair of shoes to their taste in these shops. While waiting for nightfall, let's go for a stroll to the Recoleta Cemetery. It's the equivalent here in Buenos Aires to the Père Lachaise in Paris. Beyond the portal, we enter what truly looks like a small village full of sumptuous family vaults that combine luxury and solemnity. Eva Perón and Carlos Gardel are two of the many well-known Argentinians who are buried here in the Recoleta Cemetery. As for Carlos Gardel, he was the greatest, the personification of the Argentinian tango singer. Thanks to the quality of his voice and his early death in an airplane accident, he became an international star of mythical proportions. All those who talk of or hear about tango since have associated it with his name. To a certain degree, Carlos Gardel is tango. Any visitor to Buenos Aires who wishes to immerse himself in local culture, whether it is through the sights and sounds of the city, its culture and history, or through the passionate fury of the tango, will find this, the Caserón Porteño, infinitely preferable to your average classic hotel. The hotel is designed to make guests feel at home, and also to give them an introduction to the tango community. Basically, the cost of tango classes is included in the price of the room, so most of the guests take advantage of the offer. The hotel even has its own dance studio which guests are free to use for their own practice. Every evening at 6 p.m., a tango teacher teaches a class for the guests. The history of tango was lost with the disappearance of the black population in Argentina, but we know it involved a great mixture of cultures. From the whites, the blacks learned partner dancing, totally foreign to African traditions. These European ballroom dances, such as the mazurka, the polka, were deformed in the process. But the opposite is also true. The whites copied the blacks, thereby inventing new steps for their dances. And it was in the slums and the brothels of Buenos Aires that this process of fusion took place. At the dawn of the 20th century, the tango grew from the solitude of the first immigrants. At that time, there were almost 3 men for every woman. The men often danced together, thinking nostalgically of foreign lands, of their poverty or their frustrated desires. The residents of Buenos Aires, the porteños, go out often and stay out late, very late even. In the milongas or dance halls, the evening rarely begins before midnight, 1 a.m., or even later, depending on the place and the day of the week. Sometimes the Argentinians will even go to bed in the evening and then get up to go out at about 2 a.m., coming home at dawn or mid-morning. People come to the milongas to have fun and to meet friends, but also to check each other out and flirt. The older porteños keep up the traditional etiquette of the former milongueros. It's an exceptional sight. It almost feels like you're lost in time. If the tango is a multicultural dance, that's because it was born in a multicultural city and country. Because the beauty of Buenos Aires, much like New York, is that during the 19th century, these American ports threw their doors open to immigrants from all over the world. The tango tradition in Buenos Aires has faded a little in modern times, but for those who still uphold the tradition, it's a real social act. Born in the slums of Buenos Aires in the early 20th century, tango communicates a lot of passion, but also a kind of nostalgia linked to exile and to the loved ones who have left.